welcome to the Business of Story. I'm Park Howell, and today it's all about how you can use storytelling to translate what a brighter tomorrow can look like for your prospects, customers, colleagues, and the communities you serve. Providing, of course, they buy into your story in the first place. Here's how you do it. Which leads me to a teaching moment. I want to share with you a quick portion of my Business of Story training that brutally illustrates how a story wins the day every day over logic-driven stats and facts. Now, many years ago, during some conference somewhere, Bill Gates and Steve Jobs were sitting on a panel, and the moderator asked these two tech titans to explain how some Microsoft software got inside an Apple computer. Listen to how Bill Gates, definitely the left brain in this duo, attempts to tell the story. A visually frustrated Steve Jobs sitting right next to Bill interrupts his confusing, complex rambling with a simple story that illustrates what happened. As you listen, notice how Gates makes you feel with his explanation, and then juxtapose that with how Jobs makes you feel with his delivery of the same information. Oh, and see if you can pick out the nested ABTs in Jobs' story.
Some people here, but I don't think most people know that there was actually some Microsoft software in that Apple II computer. Do you want to talk about what happened there, how that occurred?
Yeah, there'd been the Altair and a few other companies, actually about 24, that had done various machines. But the 77 group included the PET, TRS-80,
Commodore,
and Commodore PET, TRS-80, and the Apple II. The original Apple II BASIC, the Integer BASIC, we had nothing to do with. But then there was a floating point one where, and I mostly worked with Woz on that.
Let me tell this story. So Woz, my partner, we started out with this guy named Steve Wozniak, brilliant guy. He writes this BASIC that is like the best BASIC on the planet. It does stuff that no other BASIC's ever done. You don't have to run it to find your error messages. It finds them when you type it in and stuff. It's perfect in every way, except for one thing, which is it's just fixed point, right? It's not floating point. And so we're getting a lot of input that people want this BASIC to be floating point. And we're begging Woz, please make this floating point.
Who's we? How many people are in Apple?
Well, me. We're begging Woz to make this floating point, and he just never does it, and he wrote it by hand on paper. I mean, he didn't have an assembler or anything to write it with. It was all just written on paper, and he'd type it in. He just never got around to making a floating point. Why? Well, this is one of the mysteries of life. I don't know, but he never did. And so, Microsoft had this very popular, really good floating point BASIC that we ended up going to them and saying, help.
So if you want to sound less like Gates and persuade more like Jobs, then now is the time to take the ABTs of Agile Communications quick online course. Just visit businessofstory.com/ABT and start simplifying your complex stories so that your audience actually cares about what you have to say. That's businessofstory.com/ABT. Doesn't get simpler than that. As a business communicator, your job is to translate what opportunity looks like for your prospects and people if they buy into your vision and mission. No one demonstrates that point better than today's guest, Luis Miguel. He came to America from Mexico as an immigrant and has built an international translation firm called Avantage, a company with empathy beyond words that helps immigrants realize their American dream, just as Luis has.
The story and the focus that we have has allowed us to grow. We are up to about 50 people now, Park. We are in Mexico, the United States, Poland. Those are our three major hubs. But we have employees now in Egypt, in Argentina, in Colombia, scattered throughout the United States. The fact that we have this unifying, focused, strong story and purpose is really been critical for us to keeping this diverse team united. We have managed to keep this sense and this true identity as a small company that is really focused on our customers' needs and ultimately their customers' well-being and success.
As you'll hear, Luis's company, Avantage, has experienced exponential growth starting in 1996 and is today an industry leader in the highly competitive market of translation services. He credits his remarkable journey on a passion to help immigrants not just understand, but overstand what it takes to become an American, building a dedicated team, and clearly articulating his unique brand story. Luis believes that to make an enterprise work, you must believe in your story first. Make sure your story is relevant. And of course, work with people who also believe in your story. Joining Luis on today's show is Roxanne Addison, marketing manager at Avantage. Toward the end of the show, Luis reveals a new market in the healthcare industry that Avantage is attracting. Using the ABT, I show them how to create a unique, singular narrative to connect with this new audience while leveraging the story equity they've already created with their empathy beyond words, singular brand narrative. So follow along and you can use the coaching I give them to help you clarify your own brand narrative. All that and more right here on The Business of Story. Luis and Roxanne, welcome to the show.
Hello. How are you? It's a great honor to be back here.
Hi, Park. Thanks for having us.
It's been a while. It's been several years since you were on the show last, show number 151 for all of you listeners out there. If you want to get the backstory of what we're going to be talking about today, and that is the brand story development and how Luis, Roxanne, and the team at Avantage have used it for everything from recruiting and retaining top talent to finding their ideal customers to now even an expansion into the New York market. Now, Luis, let's talk about that a little bit. I got acquainted with you back in 2017, 2018, roughly right about then. And you had a real going concern with your Avantage translation company. At that time, you're in Davis, California, where we met. You have offices in Mexico City and Warsaw, and maybe you have even expanded since then. But our trick was, how do you make your company stand out in the commoditized world of translation services? And that's really pretty much what everybody tries to do. How do I get my product offering and service, and even myself as a personal brand, to really stand out and resonate with audiences in this world we live in today that is about abundance? I mean, our customers have abundant choices where to go. So I had the honor of working with you to really help you dial in that brand story. And I guess what I'd like to start with, Luis, how have you been using it and to what effect?
The major impact really has been internally on me. And we had a story where one of my employees this last weekend mentioned how much more inspiring I have been and how it's made his job, he's actually in the business development area, much more engaging and easier with clients. And it has a lot to do with the fact that since I started managing the company with the purpose that I came to this originally and just making it explicit both internally and externally, it has really allowed me to flourish and to be much more articulate, much more passionate, and much more energetic in how we've managed the company. So that has been, I think, one of the most important ways where the work that we did together with you has impacted the company.
And I suppose that just comes from focus. It seems like when I talk to other customers and clients that have been through this, that you were already doing this terrific work. And we're going to talk about your purpose in 1 second. You were already doing this terrific work on purpose, but you weren't intentionally talking about it, nor did you really have that story clarified. And then after going through the discovery process and the 10 steps of the story cycle system, your story revealed itself. So it wasn't me writing your story. It was really about you and your team going, this is the story. I just had that vantage point from being on the outside looking in and asking all those tough questions. But you did the hard work of really revealing that story to the world. So AvantPage sitting in this world of international translations, meaning that you translate words so that, in your case, immigrants in particular can truly understand what's going on and help them live the American dream as they make that transition into the United States. What from your story is the ultimate purpose? How do you describe it now for AvantPage?
We really are dedicated to enabling immigrants to achieve their full potential in this country through language services. And we express it as saying, enabling them to reach their American dream. When I first came to this country, I had a number of incidents that showed me very clearly how important being able to speak and understand the language is to the success of anybody who's in this country, especially coming from a different culture. And, when I was a young father, my children were going to school, and I saw a number of recent immigrant kids that were not doing very well in school. I got close to their parent, to these children's parents, and they asked me for support because essentially they were not able to communicate effectively with their teachers, and they were not able to understand the principal. So they came to me to ask for my support. I was able to interpret and translate between them. And once they were able to communicate well with their school staff, and their children then were able to really be able to get support for their homework and be able to just know when things were happening and so on, the performance of their children just normalized and became just as successful as my kids were. That showed me just the power of language and how these kids were now going to be able to go on and be successful in school.
So one of the impetus behind really what you have become is an activist brand helping immigrants realize their American dream. And we were able in your story to really boil it down to 3 words: empathy beyond words.
Right, empathy beyond words, absolutely. Yes.
And are you still using that? And how are you using it?
Well, why don't you speak to that, Roxanne?
Yeah, sure. So, of course, empathy beyond words was already available to me when I onboarded with AvantPage, and there's a lot I think that it holds behind it. As you mentioned, it's 3 simple words put together, but there's a lot of depth to those 3 words, which makes it very applicable in a variety of different ways everywhere. So honestly, it can in terms of our general communications messaging, whether that's on social media, whether that's email marketing, even it could be like an email signature, in sales sheets, any type of communications, that those 3 simple words are very applicable, and I think they resonate really deeply for people. And so that means, honestly, I just put it everywhere. I try to make sure it's pulled out. I recently, I was meeting with our proposals manager, and we were talking about how we can kind of better align our marketing strategy into proposals. And one simple change was bolding, italicizing, and changing the color of those 3 words directly in the cover letter. So I think that there's no need for change there at all. It's just we've been drawing it out more and more, and I think that it is completely timeless and classic in that aspect.
And Roxanne, how long have you been at AvantPage?
Just over a year now.
So when you were recruited in, how did Luis and his team use that brand story to intrigue you about this opportunity and say, yeah, this really resonates for me?
Well, it started before I even spoke to anyone. So it started in the first things I see online, as it would with, I think, anyone, customer or talent, which it was very obvious off the get-go when I was applying for the job that Avantage is an immigrant-focused company, which, while that is a big part of many companies who are doing these services, there aren't any other ones that really call it out the way Avantage does. Sometimes they stratify into different directions, and it seems like often in language services, the end user can be lost. We may say end user 100 times, but the fact that we're creating equal access to opportunity, not just language services, is very frequently left behind in the thought. And I think it's very easy for our busy clients to kind of slide over that as well. So that was a huge driver in me applying to Avantage. Being able to work in an immigrant-focused company was important. It's something I'm originally from Atlanta. It's a very diverse city, and being in international atmospheres has kind of been in my DNA since the beginning. So being able to sort of have that activist brand approach was definitely appealing.
When we worked through the story cycle system for Avantage, and to your point, Roxanne, the immigrants, the people that are reading these translations are the end users. But Luis, you are selling to governments. You are selling to people that need to pay you for your services. So we created first this brand position statement that read, Avantage is the #1 resource for translation services to help governments, healthcare, and democratic elections connect with and empower immigrant populations. So that's kind of the less sexy way of saying, here's where the rubber meets the road. Here's how we are different in our category and even our category design. And then we start humanizing that with your unique value proposition, which was Avantage with empathy beyond words helps immigrants overstand their brave new world. Not understand it, just understand it, but to overstand it, to have a greater appreciation of the dynamics, the politics, and whatever else is at play. And so you, as the translation firm, you, the one sharing these stories with them, have to be absolutely specific and clear and accurate in how you do that. So, Luis, when you share that approach, how does it attract the right kind of customer to you? The same kind of bureaucracies, if you will, or the healthcare industry or the governments that have caring people inside of them that actually want to have the same kind of outcomes that you can create there at Avantage.
It really makes a huge difference, Mark. Most of our competitors essentially come and talk about how great their services are, the quality. They talk about pricing, their technology, and it's all important, of course, right? But there's one company that stands out because we identify, most of these people that are working in the healthcare industry and in the government providing language access to immigrants, they are not there for the money. They could be making a lot more money if they work for the private sector. They're there because they care about the immigrants, the people that are not speaking English well, and therefore they need this extra support to be able to participate fully in our society. So the fact that they see that we are a purpose-driven company, this is our focus, it really resonates very deeply with them. As Roxanne just mentioned, we are completely focused on this in our proposals, in our marketing, in our sales materials, and we actually live it day in and day out. Our giving, our essentially the activities that we do are all focused on helping immigrants succeed, and we do it through language access services.
Have you had a moment when you were explaining or sharing your activist brand story, this idea of empathy beyond words, with the prospect, and they didn't get it, or they thought it was too woo-woo, or they just weren't into it. They just wanted the low price leader.
Yes, we have that all the time. A good number of our proposals are, as Roxanne can tell you, are lowest priced. And in many ways, Park, it's not because the person on the other side doesn't care, but because the organizational context in which they work in a procurement area is looking at that only. But to be honest with you, they are still looking at us more favorably than if we did not have that care, that deep purpose behind our company. Because there's different ways in which they can be helpful to us by essentially giving us more time or allowing us to, debriefing us as to how, the criteria for success was. There's all kinds of things like that. But so it does happen, but it's rare. And in most of the cases, if we dig deeper and they really see how genuine it is in our case, they actually, it's very helpful.
Roxanne, you come into the Avantage world and living into this story now, and I imagine in your marketing experience in the past is if you don't have a powerful story that really differentiates you, then you get lumped in with the low price leaders, right? And there's no margin in that. And so if you are doing exceptional work, accurate work in your world, and you have a story that you can really share with that procurement officer there, even when they are handcuffed with, that low price leader thing, how have you experienced this story working to level up, people's thoughts and impressions of Avantage?
Well, I think that's a really good point in terms of focus and not getting that race to the bottom problem that can happen. But one of the things I would like to call out specifically is actually in regards to innovation within language services for maybe, say, current clients, although, of course, it could be prospective. Our account managers, they're really fantastic. They really know what they're talking about, and they work on really partnering with their clients. And in doing that, they are super focused specifically for the immigrant. And when we're better aligned with clients who see things the same way as us, aka our messaging resonated and they wanted to go along that line as well, I think it sparks a different type of innovation that's happening with what kind of projects are going on. And that account doesn't become an account, it does become a partnership. And they start to do sort of different types of services. And I think that that's really, really crucial when it comes to areas like language services or diversity and equity and innovation and all of those areas. These are areas that, while have been around for a while, still are relatively new. Most of the old school language service providers really popped up in the mid-90s. And then, of course, with plenty coming in after the fact. So in terms of that, it's a relatively new thing happening, and there's a lot of room for an improvement. And it's those partnerships that are very aligned who can create that innovation that improve the quality of what they're putting out.
Well, and you're also competing with online AI, right? In machine learning, where why do I need a translation company? Let me just dump
Absolutely.
it into this platform, and it's going to spew out what I need, right? Where that is missing is the human touch, the insight,
Exactly.
and saying, yes, that's one way to say it, but that's not the way our readers typically say it.
Absolutely, Park. And one of the things that few outsiders from the industry really understand is that the main thing that we provide is actually a service to our customers. The actual translation or interpretation of spoken words is valuable, it's important, but what really differentiates us is the personal service that we're able to provide to our customers. And that is a big area where this purpose that we have, where this commitment to helping the immigrants succeed in this country really shines through. Because as you just mentioned, you can go to Google Translate or Bing Translate or many other automatic translation engines out there, And you can get a fairly decent translation for, a good amount of text that you have. But in reality, the institutions that we work with are looking for placing this text in the right context, making sure that it appears at the right time and that it's delivered in the right format with the right, all of these files need to be done simultaneously and look similar. So it's really a lot more about the service that we provide than the actual translation conversion of the language between one language and another.
And that service you provide, of course, is what you make, those exceptional translations. But what you make happen is this idea, again, of empathy beyond words, that you take it further. So it helps differentiate you from those online AIs that can give this to you because they don't have empathy. You do, but it also helps separate you from the big, large, gigantic translation companies that maybe have lost some of that empathy in the translation of having all those people on it. So a brand story to me, and I'm hoping you're experiencing there at Avantage, really is meant to do two things when you get that singular narrative focused down like your empathy beyond words. And that is, number one, to, of course, differentiate you in a very, very crowded marketplace, but also be aspirational, so that those that come to work for you share that same mission and that same purpose, and they are doing something that's bigger than just their jobs. Roxanne, how have you seen that play out with some of your colleagues there at Avantage?
One idea that just come to mind is that our colleagues just were in Oregon for Oregon Public Health Association's annual conference. It was a conference not on our radar. We weren't necessarily planning to do it from the get-go. I am a very type A person when it comes to planning. So while I will pivot when necessary, it's not my preference, but this sort of fell in our lap as a potential conference we could do. And we could very quickly see that those types of clients who are very well aligned to us would be there. This meant that the two colleagues of mine that got to go, who I know are very passionate about what they do. They know everything about it from both the client side and the LSP side, have tons of combined years, like 17 combined years of experience in the work. Not only can they go and they can relate with everyone, but they can talk to it on their level as well. So it's not actually about the language services, it's about the equity that you're creating. And that messaging is what's coming through in everything they put out. I mean, they really are knowledgeable, and sometimes they'll write stuff up and I steal it for marketing purposes. So they're doing a great job with it and aligning to those areas, and then them using it in their day-to-day, including at conferences like this, I think finds the right people for us.
Now, Luis, we haven't spoken in a while. How has Avantage grown since we last chatted a few years ago? Personnel-wise and even country-wise, are you still just in the same 3 locations, or are you expanding from there?
You just mentioned a very key word, and I'm going to talk about it in how the story and the focus that we have has allowed us to grow. And we are up to about 50 people now, Park. We are in Mexico, the United States, in Poland. Those are our 3 major hubs. But we have employees now in Egypt. We also have employees in Argentina, in Colombia, and scattered throughout the United States. And the fact that we have this unifying, focused, strong story and purpose is really been critical for us to keeping this diverse team united and working in unison. One of the things that we celebrate very frequently, Roxanne can tell you, is I always mention teamwork. It's really critical for us that we can grow so that we can provide the volume and the breadth of services that our customers need, but at the same time, we are keeping the personal touch, this focus on the well-being of the immigrants foremost. And our growth has been really dramatic, also in terms of revenue, in terms of the services we provide. But at the same time, we have managed to keep this sense and this true identity as a small company that is really focused on our customers' needs and ultimately their customers' well-being and success.
You know, Roxanne, one of the things that I think Avantage has always done a very good job with, and I imagine you have taken over since you've been there for a year now, is how well Luis and the team have been demonstrating and expressing the story through your marketing materials from the website. And I would send people, listeners there right now, Avantage, AVANTPAGE.com, and see this story, Empathy Beyond Words in Life. How does it help you from a marketing manager position to remain on that singular narrative and find that common storytelling voice or theme throughout all of your diverse people and materials?
It helped immensely from the get-go. Originally, when I onboarded, I had to, of course, get myself acquainted to a lot of different things. And I have since created cheat sheets, which are the items I use frequently that I open up when I need to be reminded of anything, which honestly, I probably visit that sheet like at least twice a week. So it's a huge driver when it comes to incorporating it across the board, and it makes it a lot easier to get started and start somewhere when I'm creating anything, as well as working with other people. And I do think I've heard repeatedly now from collaborators that messaging is very clear and it comes through, and they're pretty impressed when it comes to the level of maturity I think our marketing has and is continuing to go in. And then also just in terms of the nature of our work and what we're doing and the fact that we are a small business and that we're growing, I think it does help us bring us back to our roots, which is critical because we, of course, want to grow, but we don't want to be one of those major corporations who things get lost during bureaucracies or repeatedly. I've heard on different podcasts that clients, while they do need to have a globalized market for across different languages, they want local, they want community, and they want personal. And I think that that's very much driven throughout Avantage. And one of the major reasons why I use what we have, and I also try to build in a lot of the actual individuals that make up Avantage as well.
Yeah, there's nothing that beats an individual story about a moment in time, about a person, and what did they have to overcome to be able to share how you help them overcome that and achieve what they're looking for in their life. And it just seems like so many brands miss that. You know, they go back and they default back to features and functions, what they make versus what they make happen. So it must be fun in your role, Roxanne, to be able to share those stories.
Yeah, actually, it's interesting you mentioned the word fun because, you know, when I first onboarded, it was the end of the year, so I created the marketing strategy for 2022, which has been great, and I've gotten to take away a ton of insights and build up my ideas over this last year, collect them, and now I'm in the part where I'm preparing our marketing plan for 2023. And I feel like this is really where I get to start having fun. Like this last year has been great. I can't say anything negative about it because it's been wonderful, but now is when I can use everything I've learned, everything I've created, built off of the experiences I've had throughout Avantage, and do the fun work. I think that that's going to be really just where things can kind of, I hope, blow up for Avantage. But I think in year 2, it's just really getting the chance to do the fun parts. I get to have fun with it and bring out that story even more, perfect as better as we can, and get going with that plan in a way that will really resonate and continuously just kind of snowball effect.
Luis, a lot of companies don't want to spend the money. They don't want to invest in their brand stories. A lot of times they think it's kind of a woo-woo thing, or is it really going to get me anything out of it? Did you have that trepidation going in? And in hindsight, what has it meant to you personally and professionally to really dial in the Avantage story?
Definitely had trepidation. You know, this was several times our marketing budget for the year. This change of complete focus. And it has turned out to be one of the most important and successful investments that we have done, with an impact, as we just mentioned it, right? We talked about how it has impacted me personally, refocused the company, has motivated our employees. We see it in our recruitment, for example. We are attracting candidates of the highest quality in the industry, which is really difficult because we're competing against companies that are several times larger than us and pay significantly more. And of course, in the just winning one account that pays for itself over and over and over. So it is definitely something that I did with trepidation. But more than the investment of money in this effort, Park, it really requires an investment of your whole self and a huge amount of time and resources. We enlisted all of the company in this effort. We had focus groups, we had meetings, it was a process that took about 6 months, if I remember correctly, Park, from the moment we started working with you all the way to the beginning, right, of the actual living the brand through our company, but essentially the completion of the process to really get our brand and understand it and rebrand it, to focusing on it. So that, I would say, is actually the major investment that you have to be thinking about making if you're going to be doing something like this. It's not, the time and resources and your people and the focus, because as a leader, you have to have credibility with your people. And if you get them to do all kinds of things like this that they perceive as not being part of their core job, I'm busy processing projects for this client. Why am I being called to talk about how I feel about immigrants, for example? I would lose a lot of that credibility with my people. So it's something that you really need to be fully committed to.
And I proudly included your case study, or case story, I should say, in my book, Brand Bewitchery, which takes companies through the 10-step story cycle system and how they can use it for their own world. And I just commend you because you did do it the right way. It took us the first, 6 weeks to 2 months to dial in the brand story, but then you did the real heavy lifting of getting all of your people dialed in, going in then and getting them to buy into it, and then the creation of the new website and your marketing materials. So from start, our initial conversations and discovery to the point that you actually launched it to the world was about that 6-month process. And that's pretty doggone good. A lot of companies can't even act that fast on activating a new brand story. So you guys did a great job with that.
Thank you, Park. I wanted to mention to you something that we are encountering today. And we are branching into a new vertical market. And this is in Europe, not the United States. This is in Europe. And we are branching into a life sciences market where the current brand story that we have does not have the same resonance for that market and for this geography. And I was curious to see, we are definitely using the purpose and the empathy and we developed 3 values during that time: empathy, opportunity, and rigor. Those are still being very useful. But the story about helping immigrants does not resonate with life sciences in Europe. And I was wondering if this is something that you can give us some advice on.
Absolutely. And so this is that kind of situation as a company is expanding and growing their verticals into some new verticals that you, of course, do not want to abandon your brand story as you have created it. You just want to shed it in a new light. And so this is literally, folks, the first I've heard of this. So we are just going to do this off the cuff and see what happens. Now, when this happens, what I challenge you to do, and I challenge the listener or any brand to do this, and this is where that ABT tool comes in. And all my ongoing listeners know about the and, but therefore you all in working through your brand story know about it. But it's a great place to see how you can take your existing brand story around that idea of empathy beyond words and make it fit and work for you just as, as well as it has before in the life sciences. So let's go through a quick little ABT exercise.
Yes.
Shall we? Roxanne and Luis, you can just jump in here. Now, what I like to do is ask you the very first question is, who is your number one audience in this vertical market in Europe in life sciences? Who are you talking / selling to?
We are selling to primarily medical institutions that buy all kinds of, let's say, medical instrumentation, clinical trials, things of that nature. Large companies that produce these kinds of, for example, a PET scan machine.
And they need your translations for what? They need to, who are they speaking to or giving these translations to?
They need these to be able to export their products and sell them into all of the European Union, for example. The European Union has over 20 different languages that their member countries have. And in order for a product to be able to be sold in the Union, it has to have its technical documentation, its user manuals, its marketing, its sales, its consumer warnings, all kinds of things. It has to be done in all of the languages of the European Union. That's an example.
And do you have a lot of competition in this vertical market?
Absolutely.
So how are you different?
Well, we are different in the sense that we bring the deep experience that we have here in the United States into this new market. And we are also, we're purpose-driven. We come with empathy. We come with, we provide opportunity to our people and to providers that work for us. And we're very rigorous. So we have experience. We have the purpose. We know how to do this, and then we need to differentiate ourselves a bit more.
So then what is the one big problem that you are solving for your customers that other translation companies cannot solve for or are not solving for?
Very good question. We are able to provide for them an entry into both the United States and Europe and many other countries, and to do this across several of their product lines, for example. We're also able to do it across several of their products, for example, the interpretation, the oral versions of things, as opposed to just the written language, the translation part of it. So I would say that's a big differentiator in our case.
And when you say provide entry into the United States and other countries, what do you mean by that?
Well, what I mean is that the most of these companies that we're focused on here in Europe, they sell and market this in the European Union. And to be able to come into a different market like the United States, they need to understand the regulatory environment. They need to understand how American English works and the way that we do business here. Their audience here is not only going to be, for example, just speaking English, but they're also going to be immigrants, like the ones we focus on, that speak other languages primarily.
So your work would be primarily the U.S. specialists in translation. Granted, you can do work throughout the EU and whatever, but one of your core differentiators is because you've done all of this amazing work in the U.S. with immigrants and empathy beyond words, that you become an easier more connected, clearer, rigorous contact for them to bring their products and services into the U.S.
Correct.
Do I have that right? So that is kind of your leader going in, that if you want to be coming into the U.S., you need to, of course, have all these translation done. What you've done in the EU may be great there and work in some places out here, but you really need to have that North American specialist in the translation world to be able to create the connections and the immediate understanding of what you're offering through accurate, rigorous translation services.
Okay. That's great.
Does that sound right? Roxanne, am I close? Because, again, I'm just winging it here. This is the first I've heard of it.
Yeah, definitely that would be a part of it. Of course, this is a new market for a marketing background that I'm unfamiliar with. But one of the other things that I think we touched upon before that personally I think is important, although I don't know if it fits in the picture here, is, again, calling back to the talent of our teams that was attracted originally because of the immigrant story. I don't see talented teams like there is at Avantage. The quality of work they put into continuous improvement is, I think, a huge differentiator.
Okay, so let's go back to the ABT, and thank you for that, Roxanne. Now we are going to humanize this a little bit. So, Luis, you explained to me that you were working with medical institutions and large medical healthcare companies.
Correct.
So that feels cold.
Yes.
That feels like 3 arm lengths away. That makes me shiver. Who is that person in the organization that you are connecting with on a very primal human level? Can you describe the buyer of your service?
They tend to be there's a variety of people depending on which product line we're talking about. But for example, we're talking about a medical instrument. They tend to be the publication managers, the people that are in charge of all of their documents that this product has to have when it goes into, let's say, France. Let's say our client is based in Germany, and one of the countries that it sends it to is France, or Belgium, where they also speak French. So it is the technical publication manager tends to be the person there that we would be talking to.
Okay, what does that technical publication manager want in relation to what you have to offer? What do they want, and why is it important to their job or their career?
They want to be able to ship their product on time, and they want to make sure that when it arrives in France, that it has all of the documentation that needs to be done, that it's in the right language, and that it is also accessible to all of the people to whom they sell this product, so they can actually understand it and operate it. And so essentially, they need to be able to provide a smooth path for their company to be able to sell let's say, this PET scan machine to this hospital in France, so that the hospital is able to use it immediately to help their patients.
Great. Again, in relation to Avantage and your offering, what is the problem they have? How do you articulate, clarify their singular problem that you are ultimately going to help them overcome? So now we're in that but statement of contradiction. Let me set this up real quick. So a statement of agreement, the and statement of agreement, might be something like, you are the technical publications manager for a large healthcare firm that wants to have an immediate impact on the health of your customers. And if you can easily get your product into the market and understood by the practitioners, then you will have the impact in the world you seek.
Yes.
But you don't have that. Is it? But you don't have that in the United States? Or because I'm trying to set this up, it sounds like you being the American specialist in this.
Correct.
So sorry I interrupted you, but now what would that but problem statement be?
But the problem that they are having is that a lot of the products get rejected when they come into France because they don't have all of their documentation translated properly, and the French authorities reject them, and they're not able to then provide the services to their hospitals that have actually bought the product from them. And so it costs them money, it costs them time, they may even get sued.
Costing you time, money,
and legal problems.
And even liability.
Right, absolutely.
Therefore, how do they avoid all that with you?
Therefore, they hire Avantage, where we provide a specialized project management. We understand all of the regulations that their documentation needs to comply with. We guarantee that they will be done on time and that they will pass all of the regulatory requirements that the European Union imposes on it. Furthermore, when they decide that they want to sell this PET scan into the United States, we already have a ability to provide this documentation in many of the languages that are not spoken in the European Union and it's not English, like Chinese, for example, or Thailandese, Thai, because we have that expertise that we've developed here in the United States serving the immigrant communities.
All right. So I take all of that in, and this is what I encourage you to do with your team and all the listeners out there. We've taken in a lot of information. Let's boil it down to what we call a conversational ABT, meaning it is so basic, it's vacuous, but it gets us to the heart of the problem. And what I've been hearing is the heart of the problem is clear and accurate documentation. You want, as a health sciences professional, you want to provide clear and accurate documentation on your products and services so that you can have an immediate impact on those people you serve. But you currently don't have you currently don't always have accurate documentation, which is delaying servicing of those people as it gets held up in those countries. Therefore, you can get all of that accurate documentation. I know it sounds redundant, but all we're trying to do here is find that singular narrative to be able to expand your offering from France to England to the United States of America, something along those lines. Does that sound like I'm getting closer as we winnow this down a little bit?
Most definitely. I'm enjoying going through this exercise. It's really helping me to sharpen our message.
Roxanne, how is this landing for you?
I like the direction it's going in.
And you can say no, too, by the way. It's not landing, Bart.
I'm not saying that. I think it's going in the right direction.
Okay. So now here's what I would have you consider. This idea of empathy beyond words works really, really well in your immigrant population, and the growth of your company and the professionals you're surrounded by demonstrates that. Why, though, can you not also have and use this same word as a touchstone for those technical publication managers? That let them know that you empathize with their plight, what they're about, what they are charged and responsible for, and how frustrating and annoying and awful it is when it goes sideways because you have hired a translation company that did not have the rigor, the accuracy to create those crystal clear documents translated in whatever language so that you can continue to do your job. You are empathizing with that buyer. So you can see how this whole concept of empathy beyond words, because it is so deeply ingrained in what you do for the immigrant population, can be exactly that same sentiment, that same ethos that you apply to that customer. empathizing with what it is they're trying to accomplish, and then bringing to bear your talent and your people to make that happen. Empathy beyond words. In this case, it happens to be for the technical publication manager out there.
I love it. I think it works really well.
So we're trying to humanize that message, right? We went from this big, cold, sterile, human health services, healthcare company down to the actual individual you are impacting. And by that, then they become the representative of the rest of the people that get impacted by your work. Those that are in the publications department as well as in the product manufacturing department, sales and marketing department, to be able to get their products out there as quickly as possible with as much immediate impact as possible, because you did your job of making sure that those translations were crystal clear. Empathy beyond words.
Beautiful. Great start, Parker. I really love it. Thank you so much.
That'll give you enough to chew on.
Absolutely.
Roxanne, that's kind of been your first experience or your first exposure to the and, but, therefore. Do you see how you can use that in your world to help you really humanize and focus your message?
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. I mean, I definitely was reading about the ABT framework on your blog before I came onto the podcast here, and I think it's a really useful, simple practice that could be incorporated every single day into small tasks, large tasks, however. But this is something that we can definitely get started on, a big mouthful to chew, and go from there.
Yeah, simplify that complex message. Get it down to that singular narrative that you can all really wrap your arms around. And then when you do an ABT for this, you may have 2, 3, or 4 different target audiences. Write an ABT for each one of those audiences, placing that audience at the center of the story, and then demonstrating your empathy beyond words by how you understand that singular problem, that singular narrative you're going to help them overcome, and then, of course, how you do it. That's the easy part, showing them how to do it, because you've done such great work over the years. It's just a matter of hooking them right up top, showing them that differentiation, and then that aspirational story of empathy beyond words. This is why you want to work with Avantage.
Beautiful. Taking notes, we're going to be using it and refining it. Thank you, Park. This is fantastic. And we did it live. You're
going to have to come back and let us know how that works for you. And I really want to thank you both for being here today. I've taken up plenty of your time. Now you got a lot of work to do ahead of you. Any other thoughts, and or where can we send our people to learn more about the great work you're doing?
You can send your people to www.avantpage.com, AVANTPAGE, or send email to info@avantpage.com, where we would be delighted to share with you how we are able to help provide language access services to immigrant populations in the United States, and help them to reach their American dream, and therefore contribute to our society, develop as full human beings, and just be the best they can be.
Awesome. Roxanne, any last parting words?
Thank you so much for having us. This has been a really helpful, insightful, and fun podcast for us to join you on.
Well, thanks for, putting me on the hot seat. That was fun working through that with you. It's a little bit like Sudoku meets Wordly, or is it Wordle, I guess. It's Wordle, and trying to figure out how do we bring this story together. So thanks for the opportunity to do that with you both.
No, thank you. I mean, you told me let's do it live. Let's see how it works. So.
Fair enough.
You did a fantastic job, my friend. Now, thank you so much. This has really been great. I look forward to working with you, and I will contact you more about helping us refine this story for Europe. I think it really can use your talents, Park.
Oh, well, thank you, Luis. And thank you both for coming here today. And I want to thank all my listeners, of course, for taking in the show. I hope you found that helpful, not only their backstory and how they arrived at their brand story, and they're using it as both a differentiator and an aspirational North Star for their people and their customers. But that fun little exercise, again, we did that off the cuff. So I hope you found that helpful too. If you liked what you heard, please share this show with your friends, family, and colleagues that could also benefit by dialing in their brand story and using the ABT to find that singular narrative so that you can have the impact in the world you see. If I can help you, come on over to thebusinessofstory.com. And of course, if you want to start taking the ABT course right now, go to businessofstory.com/ABT. I have a new powerful course there called the ABTs of Agile Communications. It's 3 20-minute segments with me. Yes, it'll take you all of 1 hour. And if you are trepidatious, get in there and just do the first 20-minute segment and start writing your ABTs and see how they come together for you to help you clarify that complex message, to make sure that your communications land right the first time, and to really help you dial in your own personal or professional brand story. Check it out, businessofstory.com/ABT. And until next Monday, when we'll have another amazing story artist right here for you, like Luis and Roxanne, remember that the most potent story you'll ever tell is the story you tell yourself. So make it a great one. In fact, make it an epic one. Thanks so much for listening.